What does life look like after being diagnosed with Meniere's disease, vestibular migraines, neuritis, BPPV, MDDS, or any other balance disorder? How do you accept the new normal and learn to live and manage all the symptoms associated with these disorders? This podcast will introduce you to vestibular warriors who share their healing journey, obstacles they have overcome, and ones they continue to struggle with. Pretty much anything and everything these disorders shake up in our lives. We will share stories that are honest and vulnerable. We laugh, we cry, but mostly we learn from and lean on each other, so no one feels alone. Come be inspired and lean on a community that will empower you. You don't have to navigate these turbulent waters alone. Hello everyone, I'm Heather Davies, and this is Menieresmuse. This week I'm talking with Katie about her vestibular journey with an acoustic neuroma, also known as a vestibular schwannoma. Katie lives in North Carolina with her family, where she is a kindergarten teacher. She hopes one day to follow her passion of becoming a certified language therapist and stepping into her dream as a reading interventionist. She is still learning to balance her dizziness and exhaustion with amazing support from her church, circle of friends, and family. Welcome, Katie. Hello, I am Heather Davies, and thank you for joining us today. I'm sitting here with Katie Bray of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Katie, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I appreciate you reaching out to share your story. And would you start by sharing a little bit about yourself with the community before we dive into your vestibular journey?
All right. Well, I'm Katie Bray. I'm 43, married, and we have a lovely daughter, Emma. She's 12, and our dog, Ruby, and our daughter has a bunny rabbit, Fluffy. I'm a kindergarten teacher, and just my favorite thing is teaching reading and helping students who are struggling. Love the outdoors.
I was reading your email, and what exactly is a reading interventionist? That was your ideal position, right?
Yeah, that would be my ideal job. It's basically students who are struggling with reading. You intervene and find what's the problem and provide strategies and, explain
You
it
work
well.
with children like with dyslexia and things like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So basically if someone is struggling with reading, you pinpoint where the discrepancy is and you intervene in that one area, very targeted, and then move on to the next.
Do you find you do that a lot with your in teaching as it is, just not as a specialty?
I don't have, usually when you have your classroom, you might have maybe 2 students in your class that are like legit dyslexic.
Right.
I do a lot of tutoring also. And so
Yeah.
that's when it's kind of honed in.
Cool. Well, when did your vestibular journey start?
So I guess it was probably about 5 years ago, but I didn't know at that point yet. I was teaching 4th grade and I just noticed that I would forget things all the time. I couldn't keep up and I just was really foggy all the time. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not understanding what I'm supposed to be doing right now? I've been teaching for quite a while and I could know what's going on. So why am I struggling? And I just started getting really anxious and depressed and I just didn't know what was going on. So at that time I decided, okay, well, I'm going to take a step back. And I started just subbing and tutoring and was no longer the lead teacher. And during that time, it was probably like a few years, maybe like 2 years later, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back, but I'll go back as a teacher assistant. I'll ease my way back in. And again, same thing. Like I was having trouble keeping up with things, or like the teacher I was working with would be like, hey, I need you to do this and this. I'm like, wait, what did you just say? Like, what do I need to do? And I couldn't remember. And then in January of 2019, my dad fell and I went to go see what was going on, how he was doing. And we took him to the hospital and they found that he had a brain tumor. And so he had brain cancer. They gave him 6 months to live and walked through that journey with him. And he passed away in July 2019. But when I was taking care of him, he'd always be like, Katie, you need to check your hearing. You can't hear a thing I'm saying. And I'm like, well, Dad, you're sick and you're not talking very loudly. And he's like, I'm talking loud. You just can't hear anything. So he would like fuss and really loving. And so I went to the ENT and they were like, oh, you're getting older. So your hearing's kind of going. And I was like, okay. But I got real distracted with things going on with Dad that I didn't follow up.
Mm-hmm.
So when he passed away in July, it was January 2020. I went to my primary care doctor. I was having a lot of dizziness, vertigo. It wasn't just the hearing and the memory fog anymore. Like things just kept kind of progressing.
Right.
And she's like, well, it's probably just your grief. You know, you lost your dad. You guys are really close. And I was like, yeah, I'm grieving, but I also feel like it could be something else. And I was like, I'm not trying to be a hypochondriac. Can you just do an MRI of my head? My dad just died of brain cancer. And she's like, okay, I'll put it in for headaches. And she called me the next day after the MRI and said, you have a brain tumor.
Oh my goodness.
So it was benign as a acoustic neuroma. It was on my hearing, balance, and facial nerve. And so.
Did you have any facial numbness or decreased sensation in your face at all?
So not that I thought, but then when I went to my neurosurgeon and he like touched my face, he was like touched on the left side and he's like, do you feel this? I'm like, yes. And then he touched me on the right side and he's like, do you feel this? I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't feel it. I was like, are you touching it the same amount? And he's like, yes. And so it's just very slight. Like I can feel when you touch, like, but if I'm like thinking about it, like, oh, well, I can tell that it's just not as sensitive as the left side. Then, February 2020, I had it removed and then the world shut down. So that was.
Did they do any other testing on you besides the MRI?
No, just the MRI.
Wow.
That was it. They found it right in the very beginning of January of 2020, and I got it removed February 18th of 2020. When they found it, my dad had been going to his neuro-oncologist was at Duke Hospital in Durham. Mm-hmm. And so when they found it, because I live in Winston, I called her and I was like, what do we do? And she's like, well, let me get you she got me in with like the lead surgeon there, Dr. Alan Friedman, wonderful, wonderful man. And so I felt very, very well taken care of.
That's great. So. Now, after you had the surgery, what, if any, side effects did you have? Did you have any residual side effects?
Yeah, just a lot of dizziness. A lot, like just spinning, floating, feeling, very nauseous all the time, a lot of brain fog. Because basically, from how I've been explained, is that like my right side, the balance is no longer functioning on that side. Like, so my left side's having to compensate for everything that the right side's supposed to do. Because the tumor was on my hearing, balance, and facial nerve. So I went deaf in my right ear when they took it out. And so I have like loud tinnitus in my right side now. So yeah, basically I had a hard time just walking in a straight line. I use a walking stick. I still use it some because when I get really like exhausted or stressed or overworked, which as a kindergarten teacher, that's every day.
Sure.
I mean, that's just my life. So it's just a lot of dizziness. And then we had to go to Zoom teaching basically, because this was my surgery was in February 2020. And then I was out probably came back to work in April, but we were at home on Zoom. And so just trying to be on the computer. I mean, my principal, my assistant principal at the time, she was amazing. She was just like, okay, get this done. And if you have to take breaks, take the break as long as you get your job done. because I was an assistant at the time. I wasn't the lead teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I could do things and then take a break and then work later. So I wasn't working maybe your normal teaching hours, but I was mostly there to support teachers with some instruction materials for the students. So it was flexible. Yeah, she's awesome.
That's good. That's really good. What is your biggest challenge today?
Just really trying to find a balance, not exerting myself too much, which has been really difficult because I have 16 5-year-olds in my classroom running around. And so, yeah, that's the hardest part. The job of teaching it's very demanding on a person. And I feel like it's just accentuated now with my condition. Just the fluorescent lights in the classroom all day, and then being on your feet and like the sudden head movements, that's what contributes to the vertigo and the dizziness. And I've got to scan the room or move with these kids, or when they go to recess or when they're at lunch. It's vestibular overload.
Can imagine.
Yeah. But they're great because I actually, back in November, I fell at school. I had gotten really dizzy and I fell and I hit, I bumped into a cabinet and fell and then was on the floor. And so my students now, they're very protective of me.
Aww.
They come up to me and they'll just put their hands on my leg and they're like, "Stand still, Miss Sprague, can't fall again."
Oh, that's the sweetest.
Yeah. So when I fell, it's actually funny. One of my little students, I was laying on the ground and I was crying a little bit, and she laid her head on my chest and she just started rubbing me. And she goes, "I won't leave you, Miss Bray. I'm not leaving you. I can't leave you." And another teacher came in and was like, "Okay, honey, you need to get off Miss Bray. We got to check her out." And she laid herself on me. She goes, "I'm not leaving my teacher."
Oh, you have all these little bodyguards.
Yeah, so they're always when we're about to leave the room, they're like, "Don't forget your cane." And I'm like, "It's a walking stick. It's not a cane." He's not old yet. So.
What advice would you give yourself or anyone at the beginning of their vestibular journey?
Oh, goodness. That it's going to be a slow process and just accept that as much as you can.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to accept that. So I would say that it's a slow process, and it's not going to you're not going to bounce back maybe as fast as you want to. Maybe you do, but if you don't, that's okay.
Do you do things differently in the classroom than you did before? Do you take different breaks or more frequent breaks or anything like that?
That's really funny. We don't get breaks. So I just had my recent yearly checkup, and my doctor was saying, you probably need to work in some kind of break for you. And I was like, well, going to the cafeteria is the biggest trigger for me because of just the high pitched noises in the background and just the echoing of the sound in the room. And I mean, there's a lot of people talking, and it's like information overload. So it's actually just been maybe 2 weeks since I've had a break now. So he wrote me a workplace accommodation that I get a 30-minute uninterrupted break during the day. And so when my students go to lunch, my assistant takes them, but I don't go with them now. I stay in the room and I turn the lights off, and then I do a tinnitus therapy, sound thing on an app, and I just listen to the pink noise, and I take a break to let my brain reset, and it's made a world of difference. I've felt so much better than I have probably since even before my surgery. So I'm just having to really advocate for myself in that regard.
Right.
And if I don't take it, then I will feel bad. So
I have a friend in Canada that's I want to say she's she's teaching kindergarten as well. And she has vestibular migraines. And she took a step down a couple years ago and she really wanted to go back. So what she has implemented in her classroom is, gosh, I don't remember what she called it. I'll have to get that for you. But it's a quiet time where she dims the lights and they all it's just even 5 to 7 minute meditation, just quiet time where they just sit on their mats. And it's not only for her, but it's for the little ones too. And she's had such a shift in the kids. And it helps her, come down and be grounded when she really needs it.
No, we do that too because we're allowed to do what's called brain breaks for the kids.
Oh, nice.
And so, I mean, sometimes it might be a high energy dance where I'm looking at them like, okay, these guys are really squirrely and wiggly. We need to get up and move. So, or there's times when I'm like, all right, we need to do a nice little meditating one, which there's a site that a lot of teachers use called Go Noodle, and they have a lot of dance videos. And one of the ones my students like is called Melting, and it's very much a yoga like thing where that's like crunch your hands real tight together and then let them go, and then so you just like tighten everything and then they melt, and they love that one. So
that is good.
I do it with them. I'm like, all right, we're all gonna do this.
That's awesome. Now, you called it an acoustic neuroma. What is the difference between a vestibular schwannoma and an acoustic neuroma? Is there a difference?
I don't think there's a difference. I just think there's two names.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I don't know for sure, but I think that it's just there's two names.
Okay. Do they both deal with the Schwann cells and all that stuff in the eighth cranial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when I was first told that I had it, they said a vestibular Schwannoma.
Yeah.
I do the whole thing, my Schwannoma. But yeah, so I've heard doctors say either one interchangeably, so I don't know if there's a difference.
What other obstacles have you overcome with your vet challenges?
Yeah, what other obstacles? Just knowing to slow down, but not slow down so much that I'm not doing, like my physical therapist has said, you don't want to not do the head movements because then your brain won't reset itself, like in terms of like physical therapy.
Are you doing vestibular rehab?
Yes. So I do. Yeah, I went. That was one thing that was difficult because when COVID happened, I couldn't go in person. So I was doing vestibular rehab through Zoom, and it didn't really do much. So I really feel like it has only been in the last maybe 6 months to a year that I've really been able to focus well on the physical therapy because I can actually go in person now. So I do the exercises, and that does help. And just try not to avoid head movements. Like I still need to do them. Like just even if I'm like walking down the hall with my students, actually turning and looking as they go in other directions. Because easily I could just be like, all right, well, I'll just stand in the very back of the line and then just watch them. But the way I usually would have walked in the line is I would be in the middle. And then when we stop, I would, glance back and forth to see the front and the back. Trying to make sure I still do the movements.
It's challenging, I know. What other things would you suggest, or what was the biggest game changer after having the tumor removed?
I would say that really lately, probably just in the last maybe month, is when I've really, really started advocating for myself at school. Because it's the environment, at least around where I teach, is you just do and do and do, and you sacrifice your well-being basically for the job.
Yeah.
And I've kind of and there's starting to be a shift with teachers, I feel like, saying that no, we can't do that anymore. And so, and especially with the way I feel, I know I can't do that. So I would say the biggest game changer has just been recently, just in the fact of making sure I get that break, 30 minutes. Like that's been huge for me, to have that. And then also just having some of those like little fluorescent light covers in my classroom now for the lights, that I think has made a big difference. So just recently, I've just started trying to figure out ways to improve my quality of life, with school and home. Just trying to help my family understand what it's like to go through like a day, because they don't really know. Like they don't know what it's like to have dizziness nonstop, or the tinnitus in your ear nonstop, like, or how much of a interference that is.
Yeah, it's tough.
So just trying to talk and communicate more, and them asking questions too. Well, what's it like to walk down the street when you feel like this? And knowing that I need to go and lay down a lot more than I used to. So,
what's your follow-up look like?
My follow-up, like with my doctor.
Yeah.
So I just saw him, and yeah, just like a few weeks ago was my yearly appointment, and he wants me to continue with my vestibular physical therapy. He wants me to start seeing the counselor to talk about everything. And really, because a lot of it's just I need to be able to figure out how to deal with the stress and anxiety that's related. That's something I need to really put a priority on, because I haven't been. Not because I don't want to, it's more of I don't feel like I have the time to, and I need to figure out a way to make the time for my health.
Yeah.
So the next time he wants to see me is a year and a half. So
it's not 6-month scans. It's
from a tumor standpoint, he says that I am looking good. So like at my last follow-up, when you do the eye tracking, he said my eyes didn't shake when I had to follow his finger.
So you were having nystagmus before?
Yes, that's what it was.
So you don't have that anymore?
No, he said it was gone. And then like when he had me walk, he said that I turned really well. So I mean, even though I feel dizzy, he said that I look much better when I walk now. Like he doesn't see as much unsteadiness as there had been before.
Right.
So, and I do think that my lifestyle in terms of my job does help with that, because I am constantly go, go, go. Like I'm not someone who can just sit on the couch,
right,
because that's not my job.
Right.
So
just got to get that stress and anxiety under control.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I never experienced anxiety until I had my vestibular symptoms. And if my stress or anxiety are out of whack, my symptoms are amped up.
Yes. And so I feel like for me, like I'm kind of at the turning point now of, I feel like I might have to leave the classroom as the lead teacher and find a different role, just because physically it's really difficult to keep up. Because I mean, little students have a lot of needs, and it just continues to get to be more, with how things are in education. This more and more is being added to the plate, and I just physically I can't keep up.
And do you think you would step into that the reading interventionist position? And
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Would you do it in person, or would you do it via Zoom, or both?
I prefer, I could do both. I would prefer in person. But yeah, I would love to do that. It's just a matter of now figuring out how to make that happen.
Right. Right. Yeah, you never know. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
So much out there. So after you had your tumor removed, did you have any radiation or anything like that? No need for it?
No.
Awesome. That's really good.
Didn't have to do that at all. since my surgery, not being able to move like I used to or exercise the way I used to, it's really taken a toll on my body. And a lot of it is too is, I mean, I definitely had moments of depression because of this and just being very down, and discouraged and defeated. I've never really struggled with my weight in my life. I mean, I've not ever been like stick skinny or anything, but
Right,
I've
me
not
neither.
struggled. I haven't struggled.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's definitely contributed to it. So I've gotta find a way. I really feel like I said before, I'm at a crossroad where I'm just trying to take my life back, like take control over things myself.
Right. What has living with a vestibular disorder taught you?
I would say probably what it's taught me is to slow down. My husband also has some health issues. He's legally blind, and so I'm the one that has to drive because he can't drive. And so when we came home from the hospital after I had my surgery, and I wasn't allowed to drive.
Right.
So, like 5, 6 weeks, they said you can't drive. So I felt trapped in my house
Oh,
because he couldn't drive me anywhere and I couldn't drive anywhere. And I remember just being like on my porch one day, it was in the evening. I was like having an anxiety attack and I was just like, I can't leave. I can't go anywhere. I feel trapped. And this is going to sound terrible, but it's not supposed to. But then, like a few days later, they shut the world down because of COVID. And I go, I'm not the only one trapped. And all of a sudden, but it made me feel better.
right.
I was like, okay, everyone else is trapped too. And so it's going to be okay.
The way it's supposed
So,
to be.
yeah. So I don't know. For some reason, that COVID wasn't as hard when everyone was stuck at home for us because my husband's always been home because in terms of he works at home and he has to depend on me and friends and family to drive him places. And so then when everyone else couldn't do anything and then I was also stuck at home because of my surgery, it actually made things better because I was like, okay, we're not the only ones stuck.
Right. Well, that's good.
So I
When
guess
we're,
for me, the thing is I've learned to slow down,
yeah,
for sure, and really just take care of myself more and advocate for my needs more and
yeah,
yeah, slow down.
good. Are you in any groups on Facebook?
So yeah, I'm on some groups with Facebook, but I don't connect well with groups on Facebook. I connect well with people that I can actually talk to and see and interact with. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like it feels kind of odd sometimes to like share my deepest emotions and stuff with like strangers in a private Facebook group. I like to read what other people post and
Mhm.
like that's really helpful. But for me to build like a good relationship, I need to be able to like talk to the people face to face more than through posts. So through the group though, is it VeDA or VeDA? I never
Oh,
know.
VeDA. Yeah, VeDA,
VeDA.
Vestibular Disorders Association.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
through that group, like I joined it and I would read posts and see things. And I was like, oh, wow. And so then I reached out to, like, I private messaged like somebody. That's where I met Jen. I just private messaged her. And then we started talking. And now we use an app called Marco Polo,
She was
which
telling me about it. I've never heard of such a thing. That's awesome, though.
yeah, so it's basically just it's video chats, like a video walkie-talkie almost. So like you get on and you record and talk and then she can watch it and then she'll get back on and talk. And
Yeah.
so because I have
Like
a
whenever you
30
have
minute
time.
yeah, I have a
Yeah.
30-minute drive to school and a 30-minute drive home. So then I'll ask her questions about the beach body stuff or whatever, and then she'll get back on and answer and tell me where to find things or what to do. And
Yeah.
so that's been helpful, for sure.
Oh, that's great.
But I guess, yeah, with my support system, we're real active with our church, and I've got a women's Bible study that I'm in, and we've become really close. And just also just through good friendships and people that I've kept up with over the years. Just a very strong support system.
Makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to share with the community before we go on to our whirlwind question?
I would just say, which I've already kind of said throughout our talk, just slow down, take it easy, figure out what your needs are, find ways to advocate for yourself and ask for help with your friends and family. And while it can be hard conversations to ask for accommodations with your employer, it's if it's something you need and your doctor wants you to have it, then I would say make sure you ask for it.
Right. Thank you so much for saying that. I hear so many stories of people afraid to tell their employer, look, just because you tell your employer doesn't mean they can tell anybody else you work with. This is something between you guys, and those accommodations can be temporary. You know, if you value your job or even enjoy your job, it's worth that conversation. So someone knows what's going on.
Because it was kind of like with this year, like mid-year, I was like, I don't think I won't be able to finish the school year if something doesn't change. And so, and I didn't want to leave my students mid-year. I was like, I can't leave my students mid-year. I can't do it. And I was like, I've got to find a way to make it through the year. And the fact that it's just a tiny 30-minute break makes a world of difference is huge. So
it really is. I finally came clean at work and told them what was going on, and they were really wonderful. I was very surprised. They gave me so much accommodations to the point where when I was having bad days, I would go into a private room, kind of like whenever I was breastfeeding, go into a private room for that time and lay my yoga mat down and just recenter, whether that was laying on my yoga mat or meditating, just to get myself back, because I was working in a very stressful position. But I was able to do that, and they allowed that, and it wasn't frowned upon. So it's just having that conversation and just what's the worst you're going to be in, the same situation you're in prior to talking to them. So I think those conversations are so important.
And I think if you do get the accommodation, to use the accommodation the way it's supposed to be used. So like for me, I don't do any schoolwork or anything. Like I turn the lights off. I'll eat my lunch, but I don't work. I stop. Like, because if this accommodation is really going to work in my interests, my best interest with my health, then I have to follow it the way my doctor wants me to follow it. And that's, you take a legit break.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, are you ready for whirlwind questions?
Sure.
Vestibular disorders are
annoying.
They can be, yes. You feel your symptoms coming on and you're trying to be brave. What's the first thing you do?
I say a breath prayer. Take a deep breath and say, my breath prayer is always, I just take a deep breath and say, dear God, and then I breathe out, calm my anxious heart, or calm my brain, or calm my body, or something. So I try and take a deep breath and do a quick breath prayer.
Nice. What's one thing people usually get wrong about you?
What people get wrong about me? I don't feel like people really get much wrong when they see me, because I'm very vulnerable and open and don't really hide things or sugarcoat things.
What you see is what you get.
Yes, what you see is what you get.
What's your favorite meal?
Chips and salsa. Any kind of Mexican food.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I could eat Mexican 24/7.
We have a great place here that's very authentic. It's not like your Americanized Mexican food. It's so good.
Oh, nice. What's the last show you binged and loved?
I'm always watching the Gilmore Girls.
Is it that white noise in the background, Gilmore Girls, right?
Yes, this is Gilmore Girls. Always Gilmore Girls. Always.
What's on your nightstand?
Let's see. I've got my oil diffuser and lots of chapsticks and books. My daughter and I, we read every night. And so right now we're reading a book called Comfort by Joyce. Is it Joyce? Joyce Hostetter. She's here in North Carolina, and she writes about realistic fiction about a young girl living during the polio epidemic.
Oh,
So my daughter loves realistic fiction.
nice. And she's 12, right? Oh,
Yes.
she loves to read. I love that.
Oh yeah. She's like Rory Gilmore on Gilmore Girls. She takes like 5 books with her, and I am her Lorelai. I just didn't have her when I was 16.
That's awesome. What's an activity that completely relaxes you?
I love walking in the woods and hiking and just being out in nature and quiet. And I'm not a big person that loves I just feel like phones and social media and stuff are so distracting. I'm always joking around with my husband. I want to go back to the day where you had a rotary phone and no answering machine. So if you need to get a hold of me, call me back.
Yes, and the line that attached to the phone.
Yes.
Yeah, you didn't have to take it with you. Yeah, I know.
I also joke around that the dial-up internet sound is white noise for Generation X.
What movie could you watch over and over and never tire of?
Mary Poppins, probably, and The Wizard of Oz.
The newer versions or the old ones?
The old ones. Stay with the classics. Singing in the Rain, My Fair Lady.
Yeah, I love all those.
Yeah.
What is the most used tool out of your vestibular toolbox?
The most used tool?
Mm-hmm.
Really just remembering to rest now. That's the biggest thing, because I usually am just go, 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 and I've had to slow down a lot.
You're giving yourself permission to rest more often?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a tough one, especially when you're used to going all the time, just saying it's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if I don't slow down, then it's just going to be a train wreck. So.
Yep, you'll be forced to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
What are you extremely grateful for right now?
It's my family. I have my little family, my husband and my daughter, and my daughter amazes me. She's just a delight and wonderful, beautiful in every way. And then she's becoming more and more my best friend the older she gets. I love her.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
We just spent over spring break, she and I went, there's here in Winston-Salem an area called Old Salem, and it's kind of like a little miniature Williamsburg. And so she and I, for my birthday, I just wanted to spend time with her. So we went and stayed at a little bed and breakfast there and spent the night, went out to dinner and walked around Old Salem and Salem University area. And yeah, as soon as we got to our room, she sat right at the window and started reading a book. So.
Oh my goodness. That's really awesome. Does she write also?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she does.
She's always doing something.
That is so cool. Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story with everyone. And is there any way we can support you in the community?
Oh, if anyone out there is a certified reading interventionist and wants to help me out, figure out a way to start that process, that'd be great.
Awesome. If there's anyone out there like that, definitely reach out to myself and I'll connect you with Katie, or reach out to her.
Or if you have students who need help with their reading in any way, I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I was a little curious about vestibular schwannomas and acoustic neuromas, so I wanted to go a little deeper. But I also need to say, what I'm about to share with you about acoustic neuromas or vestibular schwannomas should not replace medical advice for diagnosis or treatment. Please seek advice from your physicians regarding any medical condition or treatment. Don't delay in receiving any medical attention due to something you have heard here. This is for information purposes only, and we do not recommend any particular testing, procedures, or physicians. Anything you rely on here is at your own risk. Please speak with your medical provider with any questions or concerns you may have. It is not our intention to give any misinformation. So, an acoustic neuroma, or vestibular schwannoma, are a rare type of tumor that are typically found along the balance and hearing nerve. The symptoms may be subtle, usually coming on gradually with intermittent dizziness, vertigo, unusual sound distortions, hearing loss, balance issues, tinnitus, decreased facial sensations. As Katie explained, she didn't even notice she had decreased facial sensations until she really paid attention to the doctor touching her face on both sides. And it was that mild that she never knew. And also nystagmus, which is an involuntary movement of the eyes, sometimes referred to as dancing eyes. These tumors are typically benign, and if the tumor is small in size, monitoring, or what they call wait and see, which is simply repeat MRIs to see if the tumor remains the same size over time. The articles I read and lectures I listened to, doctors stated there is really no way to know how long the tumor's been present, how fast it will grow, or if it has stopped growing altogether, unless they monitor it. If surgery is needed, like in Katie's case, there are a lot of things that are taken into consideration. A patient's age, the tumor's features, location, general health of the patient, hearing status of the patient. Does the patient have hearing loss on the affected side or in the opposite ear? The most important factor being the tumor size. Certain tests can be done, like caloric testing, cervical VEP, which is vestibular evoked myogenic potential testing, or other vestibular testing. Audiograms and AVR testing can also be done to test hearing. According to VeDA, vestibular.org, treatment typically includes surgical removal, radiation, and/or monitoring. So follow-up after surgery may be a 6-month MRI for a couple years, then annually for 2 to 3 years, and then biannually for a lifetime. As with Katie, she did lose her hearing in the affected ear after surgery. She uses a walking stick on occasion, continues to have dizziness, bouts of depression, and anxiety. She leans on her supportive family and continues to live her best life. Thank you, Katie, for reaching out and wanting to share your story with us. We hope you find that dream job. Thank you for joining me, Heather Davies, and my guest, Katie, on this week's episode of menieresmuse. If you would like more information on vestibular disorders, please find the link to VeDA, Vestibular Disorders Association, in the show notes. If you would like to connect with Katie or myself, please feel free to reach out to me via email at menieresmuse@gmail.com or find me on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe to menieresmuse for updates. Have an amazing week, warriors.